show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good afternoon. I'm just going to do a quick update for you guys on kind of what happened today. It was something that let me get my stream started here. So give me 1 second, please. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about kind of the ups and downs of what happened today. And there's some things that we should be talking about. There's things that I think went really, really well, and we'll just kind of break it all down. And so everything's shared, everything's getting out there. So if you guys can, obviously see this, please let me know. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. So looks like we have some people tuning in from YouTube, and I appreciate you guys. So typically when I've done these for the past, 4 years, and it's been in typically it's going to be in the gun group that I've been doing it. And so now we're actually in, on YouTube. And so this is kind of a new format for some, might not be aware about what I've done over the past couple of years when it comes to Measure 114. And so I've been following this before it was actual Measure 114. So it originally started for me back in 2021. It was IP17 at that point. And so, I've been part of this, kind of followed it. I've been reporting on it. I write on it, and, I've testified on it. And so it's something that has been really a part of kind of what I do and the work that I do here in Oregon, to obviously preserve my civil liberties, help educate, and help protect my rights. And so it's been quite the journey. And so, today was kind of bittersweet for me, because obviously we're going into the Oregon State Supreme Court, and this is the final checkpoint for us as Oregon gun owners in the state case. And so that being said, I was kind of fearful. I didn't know what to expect. This is my first time going into the Oregon State Supreme Court. And so there was kind of a learning curve for me, but I felt like I had good supporters there. There was people that were there to help support Tony Aiello, our attorney there. And I want to start off by saying he did tremendous work on our behalf today. And it was so awesome to watch. I was sitting there, near his father. I watched his mom, his wife was there, and just seeing his command presence of the courtroom was pretty impressive. And I've, obviously, following him, starting back in December of 2022, in the Harney County, I was over there. I went there 3 times, two to report directly for Oregon gun owners and write and report to, my gun group. But I also testified. I had the honor to testify in the actual state trial there in Harney County. So that was a tremendous honor to be able to do that and represent Oregon gun owners and to help try to, stop this insanity. And that's what it is. It's insanity. It'll do nothing to save lives. All it's going to do is it's an infringement. And so, it's meant to just make it harder for us to defend ourselves and our families. And so, basically Oregon voters were sold a fake bill of goods back in 2022 when this thing was originally put on the ballot. It was very misleading. It was very confusing. There's people that after they had voted, they thought a yes vote was actually good for Oregon gun owners, but that wasn't the case. It was just the way they used the verbiage. They did that on it was intentional, because they wanted to actually make sure that, that's the only way they can do this. It's all smoke and mirrors. And so there were some really great points, and, the comments are coming in on YouTube already. And this is something that was funny, is there was some really good points in there. They brought up the lightsaber. I thought that was pretty funny. It is as hard as it was to sit through it. I have hope. And that's the one people, like the people that don't know me and don't know what I do when it comes to gun rights. I have never, ever felt like we've been out of the fight. And I know it's easy to get defeated and feel like all this stuff is not going to, we're going to lose everything. I always held out hope, because I believe in, obviously I believe in our attorney, Tony. I also believe in the way he's presenting his case. And I felt that he had some really good points, and he really hammered some really important points today. And so that's where I want you guys to just know that we're, now we wait. This is what this is going to happen. So obviously, what we're going to be waiting for is they have to make their official ruling. And so it could take months for this to happen. So there's nothing's going to go into effect tomorrow. And so I need people to just kind of be, pay attention to it, but it's like it's now kind of out of our hands and we have to kind of wait for them to actually rule on that. And it could take 3 months, it could take 6 months, it could take a year. This is a very complex situation. You have multiple things that they're going to be weighing in on. And what they're going to be weighing in on is obviously they're going to be weighing in on the permit to purchase process. They had some really great questions today. The state of Oregon, their attorney really did not do a good job presenting the case. And he had a tendency to revert to the emotional argument. Okay. I want to preface saying this is, we don't want to see anybody lose their life, right? But the problem is with the other side, they don't have the Second Amendment in their favor. They don't have Article 1, Section 27 of the Oregon Constitution in their favor. So what they have to do is they have to bring in the emotional argument. That's when he brings up Las Vegas. He started to go into the spiel about Las Vegas, which I've heard numerous times from these, because I've been part of this whole time, right? So I've heard them present this argument first in Harney County, and then they presented it again at trial, right? Because they had the temporary restraining order hearing back in December of 2022. Then they presented it at the state trial, which I heard there. So everything was about, they talk about public safety, right? They're worried about these. They call them high capacity magazines. I call them a standard capacity. I don't know about you, but every gun that I buy comes with a standard capacity of 17 rounds or more, or 30 rounds or more. So that's a standard capacity. It's not a large capacity. That is a capacity that comes from the factory that way. Okay. And so they're going to split hairs. They're going to say this is public safety. Then they argue. Then they bring in the fact of, Las Vegas, which is a horrific tragedy. And we never, ever want to make light of that. But the thing is, that's the only thing they have to stand on, because they cannot stand on their principles or their ideals. Okay. They always have to tweak it to make it so it resonates with either the jury or the justices in this case, right? So they had 7 different justices there. What I love about being in the courtroom, so what I do is I have let's put it in front of the camera here. I have a legal file, and so what I've done over the history of this, I have like 5 or 6 of these that I've filled out just taking notes. Okay. And I'm taking notes. What I'm doing is I'm looking for, are we scoring points? Did we score a point on this topic, on this conversation? And what I'm looking for is body language of the judge. I'm looking for, are they paying attention? Are they checked out? Are they just kind of, so some stuff is lost when you're watching it online because you don't see like the emotion inside the courtroom. And so that's why I love to be in the courtroom, so I can see everything. I can see who asked the question. I can note their demeanor. There's all these things that I learn. And what I do is I take that information to present it to you, the audience. Right. And, from there, I write blog posts about this to document this, to kind of paint the picture. And obviously the paint the picture is, we got to know that we're still in this fight. The fight's still going on. And so now what they're going to do now is they're going to do a media blitz. I did see the other side there. They were surrounded by the USA Today was there. They had all these different reporters. They're doing the dog and pony show. They're trying to sell this to the voters and sell this to the Oregonians that they're righteous. Their cause is virtuous. They are in the right, which there's no case law that supports that. And that's what Tony did today. He did a very good job of laying out the facts and how some of their ideas are not good for Oregon gun owners and public safety as a whole. And so what I would really enjoyed about, watching Tony do what he does is there were some really great questions that came from the justices there on the Oregon State Supreme Court. They were engaged. They understand the levity of this case. And so I feel that, and some of them really if I'm like keeping track of points scored, some of the justices asked some very important questions, both of Tony and of the state's defense. Is that really made our case, right? And so I felt that we scored more points. I'm talking to Tony after the case and on the way home, and he feels really good about what happened today. Obviously, I'm a bet man. If I'm going to bet, I'm going to bet on us every time, and because I know what Article 1, Section 27 means to the Oregon State Constitution. I know what it means in the history tradition. I've learned throughout my travels here, reporting on this, and so I felt that. Tony did a really, really good job, and he was very confident in his argument. He has spent a lot of work on this case, and so I felt, the worst case scenario, I felt really good about it, and I felt that because what the way this process is going to work now is obviously we had an Oregon State appeals court which overruled the Harney County, okay, but that was an opinion. That was not something that was going to lift that permanent injunction out of place and put Measure 114 into place. Okay. So, what they're doing now at the Oregon State Supreme Court is now they're going to weigh all of this information that's been presented to them. And then they're going to have to make the ruling on whether this is, constitutional, which we all believe it's unconstitutional. And there's case law that would support that. And so what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to rule on the constitutionality of the Oregon State Appellate Court opinion, right? And so if they rule in our favor, then this whole thing goes away and we can just pretend like this never happened. And the whole last 4 years of our lives has been for nothing. Maybe we bought a couple guns that we didn't think we were going to buy because we didn't think we could get them. Maybe we bought extra magazines because we were afraid we're not going to be able to get them because of Measure 114. And so there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that are going to kind of, what I'm looking forward to most is a resolution. I'm looking forward to knowing truly where we stand now. We do have one case. It's in the federal courts. It's going to be a long one. It's a long ways off. It's still Measure 114 still going to be, it's going to go to the 9th district, so we know about that court, but the one I'm really going to be focusing on right now is the one that at the state level. I think that's our best case right now. And so I feel that, the arguments that were presented. So let's kind of talk about some of the parts that are important to us. And so I think what I really appreciate about some of the questioning by the justices is there was one, he asked flat out, he asked the state, is there any right out there that you actually have to take a class before just to exercise that? And I felt that was a very on point argument on our side, right? Is we're saying we have a Second Amendment right from either the federal level or the state level to lawful self-defense. And so that was brought up. Do we have to have a permit just to exercise lawful self-defense? And so I score that as a point for us. That was huge. And so, obviously the permit to purchase, that was an issue because the state of Oregon, they didn't even know the cost. And so if you guys have been following what happened with the Oregon State Legislature this long session, is they tried to implement Measure 114 under 3075, House Bill 3075, and they were going to raise the fee from $65 for that permit to purchase all the way up to $150 because they know they cannot fund this. Okay, that was our biggest argument in the Oregon legislature this year, is the fact that this is an unfunded mandate for the state governments and the county governments because they don't have the staffing to issue the permits. They don't have the staffing to do the required trainings for Measure 114. And plus they don't have the funding. So that was the whole thing. This thing went from originally $65, like your CHL, and now it's ballooned to, they're not going to be able to fund it, so it's probably going to have to go to $150, like because now the reality setting in is they passed a bad bill back in 2022, which has led us to this point where they're on the verge of implementation, but they don't know how to implement it because there's so many moving parts. and then they don't have the funding to do it. They just raised our diesel taxes or our gas taxes 6 cents a gallon because they can't fund ODOT. So the state is hemorrhaging money, and all this is going to do is be an inconvenience for Oregon gun owners. Bad people are still going to get guns. It's not going to save lives. This is all a joke. And so that's where we have to just make sure that we're still part of this process. Tony does need our help still. We do need to fund it. He's still billing for what he did today. So there's going to be some fundraisers that we still have to make sure that we help him, because he did a tremendous work on our behalf. And so, that's something that we should really help out. And, I felt, so it was about an hour and 15 minutes altogether. And we had some great folks that joined us. And I want to say thank you to everybody that came. I know it wasn't easy missing work on a Thursday, but I appreciate you being there. I know Tony appreciated you all being there, just because it was nice to have people in his corner. And it was, I remember one time back in, I want to say 2023, it was during the trial. I actually had to leave because I had to go to Arizona for an event. And so I was there for the first part of the week and then for trial. And then I had to fly to Arizona. And when I was watching it on the live stream in Arizona, and he was all by himself, and it broke my heart just knowing that the state of Oregon was there with their whole legal team, and Tony was doing this battle, and it was just him and a few people from Harney County that were there that are locals. And it was hard to kind of see him on the screen kind of being alone. And so I was glad to be there. I was glad to see his family there. And I was glad to see our fellow Oregon gun owners, so there's some really positives that came out of today. And so I think the best thing we do is just kind of need to stay focused. Just know that nothing has changed at this point. Nothing will for the next couple of months. They're going to try this in the court of public opinion. And so they're going to be running articles. The best thing that we could do is maybe write letters to the editor right now and just air our side and say, hey, our attorney did really, really good. The state doesn't have a good case. And, this is Measure 114 should just go away, because they're going to do the opposite. And they have the full weight of the media. There's people that they have been salivating on this today because they want to sell ads because of this. Okay. So one thing for you guys that are maybe new to me and what I do on YouTube is I have a Google alert set. Okay. For certain topics every day that I track. Okay. So one of them is Measure 114. Is if there's ever a new thing, I get an alert from Measure 114. And so every day I do get a Google alert for Measure 114. The problem is these newspapers, they cannot sell ad space. So they put Measure 114 language in the meta title because Google picks it up in the algorithm and sends it out. Okay. And so now that's the only way they're getting their stuff out there. And so this is something to note, is they're desperate to nobody's paying any attention to them anymore. Biggest platform is now on Facebook and YouTube. The traditional media is dead. And so that's why they're desperate. They're desperate to kind of get some kind of resolution. They're hoping that they can sell some more ad space, prop up this failing campaign. But I don't think it's going to work. I feel that, the way things went, and obviously I have my fingers crossed, it's not over till they actually issue their ruling. But I feel that the work that Tony did today, and he was very calm under pressure. They had some questions. They tried to, hit him in different directions. He remained calm. He spoke to the facts. And I think the facts are what's going to, save us here. And so, they did ask him a really important question about, 2A or Article 1, Section 27. And they talked about, so what would you consider not constitutional, right? So he said, well, tanks, fighter jets, et cetera, right? And it was a lighter moment, but what he was trying to introduce is the fact that any personal carry self-defense weapon should be constitutionally protected. And that was his argument for that. And I really appreciate that argument. And so it's obviously not everybody's going to agree with that. Everybody, there might be some of us that might think, oh, you should be able to have a tank. Yeah, we maybe, but in this situation, in this state court of Oregon State Supreme Court, we're not going to score any points if we say that every citizen should have a tank or a nuke or an F-15. And so I feel that he was very measured with that answer, and I feel that he scored points there because it made it look like he was a reasonable person, right? And that's what they're looking for, is they need to make a connection. That way he can build trust with them, and then they're going to believe his side of the argument, basically. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know there's some questions coming in, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. I mean, we still got time. And what I'll do is I'm going to do another video and I'm going to try to live stream the actual testimony so you can kind of see, what he did. And we should all be proud of him. We should all go support him, thank him for the work that he did. If we can afford it, send him 5, 10, 20, 50, $100. Okay. That's going to help fill that coffer up so we can get this bill paid for so we can get back to reality. This is the end point for us for right now. And so hopefully, we can get the ruling that we need, and we're going to just celebrate, and this is all going to just be a bad dream. And so that's kind of the goal. So I'm going to start going through my questions. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Excuse me real quick. So, thanks for tuning in. So I think right here, this one's really, really important. It's okay to be stressed out, because we're out of our comfort zone, right? We never anticipated we'd be at the Oregon State Supreme Court. And so we got to pray. We got to keep our heads up. We got to know that we're still in this fight. Nothing's changed. Obviously, if things do change, then, we're going to have to course correct. But right now we have a moment to breathe. And so we should celebrate the fact that it's been almost 4 years. No, yeah, almost 4 years. No, 3 years. 3 years since it became law. Because technically, Measure 114 is law. It's just unenforceable. So they do have Oregon revised statutes that are already created that do encompass the language. Okay, it's just not enforcement because of court action. So something to think about there. So what I'll do here is I will post the actual arguments so you guys can see that. I think it's important to watch, and there's some really good points that were made, and I will make it so easy for you guys to kind of. Thanks, Darren, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Chip, right here. Chip Mays was there. Okay, this is my buddy here. I'm really thankful for all of his guidance, all of his wisdom, all of his support through all of this. He has done tremendous work. I was glad to see him today. Thanks for being there. Right here. This is not our fight. This is our fight. This is not just one man's fight. I know there's people they're looking down on us. There's a higher power involved here. And that's why I feel that we're not going to lose. And I feel that we are righteous here. And it's because of our founding fathers gave us this opportunity to remain free if we can remain armed. And so that's why I'm glad you guys are part of this process. And so one thing about this one, I get this one a lot, is 243. 243, all 243 did was it changed the effective date of implementation of Measure 114. So it's March 15th of 2026. The little asterisk or caveat that I would put there is this is not going to go into effect unless they have to rule on it first. So Measure 1, like the 243 part of Measure 114 is not going to go into effect until they make their official ruling here at the Oregon State Supreme Court. So don't get spun up on that. Not something that I'm even going to focus on right now. And so 100%, Alex. So thank you for being there, Alex. I really appreciate it. It was great meeting you. And, so there's people there. So that's, some of them, it's like they teed it up for him. He just like knocked it out. It was awesome. And so I felt good about that. So yes, 100%, Bryson, right here. So this is not going to go into effect. Measure 114 will not go into effect until they make their official ruling. I don't know how long it could take. 3 months, it could take 6 months, could take a year. Okay. I know they're going to be trying, they're going to be aiming for a date of around March 15th because that's in the Oregon legislature. That's because that's going to be in session then, but I don't think they're going to be able to get it into effect. So I'm not even going to focus on it at that point till we get closer. So I think we need to make sure that we're just staying up to date. So that's where I'm at. Yes, if we could find a good link to a good used tank, that'd be great. I would support that purchase. So, but it's after we pay our legal bill. So before you buy your tank, Randy, make sure you send a check to Tony to help him out. So 100%, Justin. If okay, the caveat here is severability, right? So severability is an important component to Measure 114. So one part of, and that's what gets kind of confusing for people is with the original Measure 14 and the 114, the one we talked about today, is there's what's called the severability clause. So typically, if one part is in other anti-gun bills, if one part is ruled unconstitutional, the whole thing gets thrown out. Okay, with this, the way they argue and the way they wrote this case, because it was written by an attorney, he was in the room today. He's really not the greatest guy, but the severability. So if one part, like let's say the magazine capacity is struck down, right, and they say that's unconstitutional at the Oregon State Supreme Court level, we could still get stuck with the permit to purchase, right? The only way that we get out of both is if both parts are struck down. Okay, so as when it comes to 243, it depends. Okay. So I'm hoping that this does knock out that part of Measure 114. And if I remember correctly, there wasn't a severability clause in that 243 part. So that could be really good. So I might be answering your question is this would knock it out. So I need to do some research on that, but I'm pretty sure that we would be good unless there is the severability. That's the only thing that would give us a hard time. So something to think about. When do we get the results? So 3 to 6 months, right? It could be a year. So, we just got to be patient, understand that the wheels of justice do move slow, and it's going to take time, but we've waited this long. So a little bit more, I want resolution. I would love resolution. That way I can know, how I prepare. So, no worries. So we'll just hopefully, as soon as I hear anything, Tony hears anything, he'll let us know, and we'll blast it out there. So just something to think about. 100% right here. So this right here. Okay. So we have to think about the original Measure 114. And the way this thing was passed, it was less than 1%. It was, it was like 49 to 50.7 or something like that. It was less than 1%. Okay. The way currently, I just saw something is the state of Oregon is under a lot of fire right now because of our voter rolls. Okay. So I think they're actually being sued, and I need to find the article and I'll publish it. Is they're actually being sued because of not having clean voter rolls. And us, like as gun owners, we could argue like, okay, well, you had 100,000 people that voted that they were either dead or double ballots or triple ballots or illegal aliens. They all voted to prevent to pass Measure 114. So there's a good chance that this thing it never should have gotten to this level because of fraud, and maybe there'd be a way for us to, like, heaven forbid, if we do lose, we could go on the offensive and repeal it via a ballot initiative, like what they did. Just do it in reverse. The problem is it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of volunteers, it takes a lot of infrastructure. So there's things that worst case scenario could be done. And so recalls are a good. We're building the infrastructure there with the recalls. We're getting people engaged civically and actively, so there are some things that we could do if we wanted to. So yes, that would be an option, is to repeal it via a ballot initiative. So That's where I'm at. Yep. Yes. 100% range twist. That's 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 what I would believe. Yes. Yes. Okay. So right here. Okay. So one thing you guys need to know about measure. Excuse me. Senate Bill 243 is parts of it are in effect. Okay. So September 26th of this year, the preemption part of it went into effect. Okay. So that means I can't, like, now there's created this patchwork. There's 900 different municipalities in the state of Oregon. They can enact their own rules when it comes to where I can carry, where I cannot carry, so they can now create their own policy, right? The problem with this part of 243 is there's actual felony charges if you carry into a place that is been deemed a gun-free zone, and it's typically going to be a public building, could be a school, so this is where it's really important for us. We pay attention to our school boards, what our water districts are doing. Anybody in the Lane County or the county governments, like, they can change policies that way, and we have to weigh in there. So that's something to think about. And so, the also is the rapid fire devices. The rapid fire device ban is already into effect. There's felony penalties for transportation, possession, manufacturing, and selling of rapid fire devices. So be very, very careful there. That is in effect until it gets thrown out, because there's been other rulings across the country that said that a rapid fire device ban is unconstitutional. So it just takes time and money. So yeah, it is redundant. Um, yes, part of it, and I think, and maybe this might be a question for Tony, is if, like, measure one, and maybe like we're bowling, you hit one pin, you hit this other pin, they all go down, right? Maybe, okay, and this is probably a question for Tony, is the fact that if measure 114 is ruled unconstitutional, it takes out the measure 114 part of 243, which then takes out all of 243. So that's a question that I don't know, and maybe that's one that we can ask Tony, but I can get you an answer. And so that's, something to think about there. Maybe that's a way where we can, parlay a big victory out of something. That'd be huge if we could pull that off. I mean, that'd be huge. Oh, 100% right here. 100% right here. So they are broke. They are broke. And so that's where they don't have the money to hire new staff. Like this, like, let's play a worst case scenario. Let's play worst case scenario. This thing goes into effect. They're not going to have the people spun up in time to get them trained to become permitting agents. They're not going to have everything in place. And then there's going to have all of us that, like, hey, we're going to go down there day one. Like, I want my permit to purchase. And we're going to say, oh, you can't provide me my permit to purchase. So now you're violating my 2A rights on the state level and the federal level. And maybe that's where we come at them at a different angle. We do file like a class action lawsuit. That was brought up in court today, which I was very that piqued my interest. And Tony was like, wow, I didn't think they would go that route. And so I think they understand the seriousness of this situation. I think they understand the liability that's involved here when it comes to the state of Oregon. I feel that there's little cracks in the dam, and I feel that every little bit's going to add up. The fact that they are openly talking in a court hearing about class action lawsuits, that could tell you something right now. We could easily put them in a really tight spot financially. 100%. Yeah, this is a really great comment. And this is one thing that I've been trying to get through to people is, I know there's a lot of people that are disenfranchised, but they have to understand is every vote mattered. I mean, we lost by less than 25,000 votes. There was 160,000 conservatives that stayed home because they didn't get the perfect candidate, but that them staying home gave us measure 114. So we have to do our duty. We have to, Trump said it best, like, it has to be too big to rig. and we have to do our part. We have to show up. We have to vote. We have to understand what's on the ballot. We have to make sure that we cast that ballot. I know it's not fun to do. I know you feel that it doesn't matter, but it really does, especially in this case. You know, if we could have gotten, you know, a third of those people to vote, we could have had a different outcome today, right? We wouldn't even be talking about this. So I know people feel disenfranchised, but if we do not get involved and do not do our part, we cannot complain about the results. And so I know there's a lot of distrust in the system. I totally get it. But the only way, I mean, they're going to continue to do this unless we get involved, and do our part. So that's, you know, that's kind of the thing. Yes, I will get you all of that. I'll make it as easy as people can get involved. You know, thanks for tuning in on YouTube. And so, you know, that's the thing. Um, you know, I'll make it as easy as I can. No, I think you're 100% correct. I think there's a lot of people, because it hasn't done anything to really better our position on when it comes to public safety. I mean, and what's the next law they're going to pass? I mean, they keep adding all these laws, and they're not enforcing ones already that are on the books, and they're also not prosecuting and letting people out early, which are now leading all this violence in our streets, and they're not really dealing with the real issue. And so, this is definitely a failure on their part. We're doing our part, right? We're carrying our guns. We're training. We are protecting ourselves. We're protecting our families. We're doing more to help public safety than arguably their new laws. And so we just got to continue to keep doing what we're doing, you know, and getting involved. We got to be just part of the solution, not the problem. So, so the difference though with this, right, is we're not arguing the Bruin decision. Okay. I really love the Bruin decision. The Bruin decision is really like a foundational ruling that's really giving us a lot of steam. Recently, the problem is we're arguing state courts, and we're not arguing the federal 2A. We're arguing Article 1, Section 27 of the Oregon Constitution. So that's why, you know, we're talking about historical tradition today. We're talking about the founding of our state. What they were talking about today, which I found is capacity. So back in the founding, our drafting of the Oregon Constitution, it was common for people to have like a pepper box, 6 to 8 rounds. Okay, a pepper box. And what I found was kind of interesting. They brought up today is while the 6 round pepper box was really common, there was a big jump in technology from 6 to 8 rounds to 11 in the magazine capacity back in the 1800s. And so I found that pretty interesting. And that was something that actually went in our favor. I was like, yeah, I didn't know that just an extra 3 rounds would have made that big of a difference, you know? So that was something. So in theory, we were talking history and tradition, but in reality, it's not, has nothing to do with the Bruin decision. I did want to yell numerous times in common use. Like I'm saying it in my head. If they only knew how many magazines are in this country, there is an estimated 500 million 30-round magazines in this country. Okay. So they are in common use. I did find it interesting that today that they did bring up suppressors, which that tells me kind of what they're kind of thinking, but they don't have the basic understanding of firearms. So they see something on the news, they see something in the media, in the newspaper, talking about silencers, suppressors, but they don't know the context on how and what the suppressor truly does. And so, a lot of the questions that they ask is probably because they didn't know. Like, these people have zero knowledge when it comes to firearms, how the firearms operates. Tony did make a really great analogy that I loved, and I'm gonna use in some of my classes. Is in the way he explained it is to think of the magazine as the engine of the car, right? So I was like, that was like a most basic way to break that down is my gun does not function without the magazine, because the magazine contains the ammunition. The ammunition is the fuel inside of the engine of that vehicle. So that's a really great point. And so that scored a point in my opinion. So Yes. Well, here's the deal with hoping. Okay, if if I don't hold out hope and I don't stay positive about things, I'm just going to give up and I'm going to accept my fate. And I'm in this situation. It is too early in the ball game to accept the fact that this is constitutional. Okay, there's still time to play in this ball game, and so I think it's really important to stay hopeful that we're going to get the outcome that we need. Because if we are not hopeful, we're going to just give up and we're just going to accept what happens to us. We're not going to contribute to the fight. We're just going to feel bad and we're just going to surrender. And I'm not going to surrender. I know there's many people here that are not going to surrender. We're going to keep fighting forward. Fight forward. Okay. So just don't give up hope. I know it's easy to do so, but just you got to stay positive. Yep. 100% happens very often. That's the unfortunate thing there, and so that's where I cast mine in person. So I went down there. It's not everybody has that luxury. Luckily there was a county office. I went there. I filed in person like I always do. That way I know it's counted. I know it's so it just the system's broken. And it's broken because they want it to be broken because that's how they continue to have a stranglehold on Oregon politics and our gun rights. It just really sucks. Um, Here we go. This is the question right here. This is the $1 million question. Okay. So I talked to Tony directly. Okay. I talked to Tony directly. Obviously, my original thoughts is I thought a 60% chance, right? That's how I felt in my heart. Okay. And I don't want to put words in his mouth. But he was very optimistic about the way things went today with the questions. And in certain regards, he in some cases he felt as positive as 75% chance in our favor, and on the other one 51%. So 51 to 49 on the other part. So and that's coming from our attorney, and he's kind of judging his performance with the questions that were asked. And so when I was trying to prepare for today and I was going up there, I was thinking it was a snowball's chance in hell that we were going to pull this off. And I left there very emboldened and empowered, and I felt really, really good leaving the courtroom. And I'll post the link so you guys can see it for yourselves so you can make your own determination. But that's just me because I have so much history here with Measure 114 and the time I spent, traveling and reporting on it. And just being in the meetings and trying to help our case, so, that's why I have kind of an interesting, perception and of Measure 114. So that's why I'm optimistic and I feel really, really good. So it just takes time. Obviously it's not over yet. And so that's kind of where I'm at. So no, I mean that's the one thing. You guys that are new to me on YouTube, I've been doing this for years on the Facebook page and the Facebook group. So Oregon Firearms Advocates, it's on Facebook. You guys can join it. It's a closed group. Make sure you answer the questions. I'll let you in there. I've been doing these videos for years, and I've been educating and trying to teach, gun rights to my neighbors, and I've seen tremendous growth in my neighbors here in the gun group. And so, if you guys want to be a part of that, join us. Okay, that's where we have like a collective, and this is where we mobilize. This is how we organize, and so I'm kind of a glass half empty kind of guy where I'm not out of this fight because there's always a maneuver that we can make. And so I want to give people hope because I feel hopeful. And so I know it would be easy to say, oh, it's over and just quit. And I'm not going to quit because we have moves that we can make. If, heaven forbid this thing goes into effect, what do we do then? Is we start the repeal process and we start a ballot initiative and we turn this into action. And what they take, we take back. And so that's kind of where I'm at, Um, that's just the thing. So that's where I'm at. So Yeah, so it'll be on Facebook. You can watch it. It'll be saved there. It'll be on YouTube. You can get from YouTube. You can share it. So you can just copy the link, share it, so your friends can see it. And that's the biggest thing is just getting the word out. Let people know that we're still in this fight. We're not giving up. And it's going to take a couple months for them to actually rule on the constitutionality. So we're going to just stay up to date. We're going to stay positive, and we're going to just keep moving forward. And so that's the thing. And this is a really great comment right here. Is that's what they want. They want us to give up. Okay, the best thing we can do is just show up. Best thing we do is vote. Best thing we can do is identify good candidates and run for office. The best thing we can do is make sure that we understand what they're trying to do and push back on it. And I can do other videos like I've done on like in the Facebook group and I can do it for YouTube. Is I can teach you guys how I'm kind of like I call myself an advocate, but I'm really an activist because I believe in my two-way rights and I fight actively for them. And so you know I just think it's important that if we if we started fighting forward, we're fighting all together instead of having 80 different or a million different opinions. If we could just kind of sharpen that message to a point, and we can point it all in the same direction, I really think there's nothing they can do to stop us. Because at the end of the day, these guys are all bought and paid for, right? They're all stooges, they're all shills, and when the money gets tight, they don't have that same drive that we do because we have something that we have tradition, we have history, we have heritage, and we have family. Everything's related, and so that's where it's important to notice to never give up. These people, they're relentless, but they're only relentless because they have the funding, and they can't debate us in the state of ideals. So we just got to stay focused, stay positive, and never give up. So excuse me, that's where I'm at. So you know that's I'm gonna, let's see, I have one comment I wanted to hit real quick. Give me 1 second. Yeah, right here. So this is a great comment. um yes. Yep. It would take some work. So you say 289,000. There's going to be signatures that get thrown out. So we'd probably want to get close to 350,000 to make sure that every one of them was valid. So it would be a definite uphill battle, but it's something, it would give us something we could focus on, and we could restore law and order, and we'd send a really big message is if we did that. But let's this is for stuff down the road. Okay, so this is our nuclear option here. That means if this thing goes into effect, this is how we throw it out. Right. We're not at that point yet. Let's catch our breath, and let's focus on just getting through the next couple months. Let's make sure we pay off the bill with our attorney, and then we'll go from there. This right here is a tie. I really appreciate you, man. I have a lot of respect for you, and I appreciate your wisdom. You always have some just nuggets, and I appreciate that. And so I've met a lot of great folks through this, that believe in me and have learned from me, and I've learned from them. And so it's we're in this together, right? And so I'm just trying to be the one that kind of gets the information. I want to get it to you in as pure as I can. There's a lot of people that do things for clicks and likes because they're getting paid. I'm not getting paid. This is something I do because it's important to me, and it's come at a tremendous cost, but it's something that I believe in, and so I just want you guys to know that we're still in it. So yeah, they've done some help in the past, and they've done some help in the past. This is they're kind of restructuring right now. So this is, yeah, they've helped in the past. Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. Is we kind of had a perfect storm in 2020. It came again in 2024. There's a lot of people that are new to guns. They're buying guns because they're afraid of what's happening. Could be the chaos on the streets. Could be violence. It could be they're maybe afraid of what's happening in the government. You know, and I get it, but obviously they're new to guns, so we get them. We have to convert them, right? We have to let them know that, hey, you enjoy this 17 round magazine or this 30 round magazine. We need you to show up and vote. You can vote any other way. If you want to vote D all the way down the ballot, that's fine. But if there's a gun vote, then if there's a gun initiative on the ballot, we need that vote. We need you to break party lines to come over to help us. Okay. We can't have them just vote straight down party lines. We have to make our tent a little bit bigger. So that's a really good question. I really appreciate you, TSO. You've had some really gems today. So other than that, I'm going to get off here. I got up at 5 and was on the road and got up there and did what I needed to do and felt pretty dang good about it. It was good to see people. And so just know that Measure 114 is not in effect yet. It's going to take a couple months for that to happen. And we're just going to regroup and, pray, and hopefully it'll come out. What I'll do is I will put all the information in the body of this. So you'll see, where you can watch the hearing. I'm going to try to save the hearing and then upload it on YouTube so you guys can see it in entirety. Just go over to Tony Aiello's page on Facebook, give him a thank you and a heads up and maybe a small donation that would really help him. And we'll keep you up to date. No, 100%. I appreciate you, Wicked. So I'm not sure where you're at in the state, but I appreciate the follow, appreciate the support. Together, we're in it together. We're going to win together. We're going to lose together, no matter what happens. And so, heaven forbid we do lose. We're going to come back bigger and better and stronger. And we just got to stay in this fight. So don't give up. That's what they want you to do. They want you to give up. So, and there's this lady that's my nemesis up there, and she's always just poking me. Always got a little just poking me. I always bark at her. And she tried to hit me again, but we're sitting directly across from each other, and she was just watching me. I could see her out of the corner of my eye. And these judges, the justice, were asking Tony these questions and making these statements. And I was just I was so excited because I knew what it meant. And I knew how it could help our case. And I could just see the disgust because she just hates me. But I'm gonna keep going. I don't care. I'm not there to make friends. I'm there to do what's right and make sure that you guys, and what's right is letting you guys know what happened. And so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep pushing. So thank you, David. I appreciate you. Hope you're doing good. So I'm out of here, and I'll put this, if you want to join the Facebook group, Oregon Firearm Advocates, make sure you answer the questions, come join us there. I've done lots of little posts today, just kind of commemorating what we did. No, thank you, Corey. I really appreciate you, dude. And it's just been fun. I got some photos of the other side, did a selfie of them trying to do a selfie and made fun of them. It's just, I do little things. It's just the little things in life. I had a really good joke, but my people told me that I probably shouldn't have that joke, so I had to edit my post, unfortunately, but I get it. So anyways, I'm out of here. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate you guys. And I will if I hear anything, I will let you know. Thanks. Have a good day.